19 feet long, an empty weight pushing nearly 4 tons, a massive 44-gallon fuel tank, and the federal government couldn't even legally make Ford tell you how bad the gas mileage was. That's not a typo. The EPA had a rule. If a vehicle's gross vehicle weight rating, GVWR, meaning its maximum weight loaded with passengers and fuel, tipped over 8,500 pounds, they didn't have to rate it, didn't have to publish a number, didn't have to put that little fuel economy sticker on the window. The Excursion's GVWR, a massive 9,200 pounds. Ford knew exactly what they were doing. This is the story of the Ford Excursion, the largest production SUV ever built, and how the perfect storm of government loopholes, corporate greed, a fuel crisis, and a very angry Sierra Club turned America's biggest flex into a $40,000 anchor nobody wanted. And here's the kicker that most people never talk about. Ford didn't really build this thing from scratch. They basically took an F-250 Super Duty, cut the bed off, stretched a roof over the back, and printed money for about 2 years. Then it all fell apart. Let's get into it. To understand why the Excursion existed, you gotta go back to the 1970s. GM had something nobody else had, the Chevrolet Suburban. And not just the regular one, the heavy-duty Suburban 2500. 3/4-ton platform, big block engines, could tow a boat and half your neighbor's garage. It was the undisputed king of large-format family hauling for decades. Ford had the Expedition. Good truck, great truck actually. But the Expedition was built on the F-150 chassis, light duty. If you needed to tow something serious, pull a horse trailer with 6 horses, haul a construction crew and all their gear, the Expedition tapped out long before the Suburban did. And that gap was killing Ford's commercial and fleet sales. Fleet buyers, construction outfits, big families out in Texas and Montana. They were walking straight past the Ford lot and writing GM checks every single year. Ford's product team saw this. They documented it. And somebody in Dearborn finally said, look, we've already got the F-250 Super Duty. We've got the platform. We've got the engines. Why are we not doing this?
The ultimate corporate shortcut. Here's where it gets interesting, because what Ford did next was either brilliant engineering or the most profitable shortcut in automotive history. Maybe both. They didn't design the Excursion from a blank sheet of paper. Not even close. They took the F-250 Super Duty, and from the B-pillar forward, the Excursion is an F-250. Same dashboard, same instrument cluster, same front suspension, same axles, same firewall. Ford engineers literally drew a line at the B-pillar and said everything in front of this line, we already built it. But bridging the gap between a commercial work truck and a family SUV came with a terrifying engineering hurdle. Because the Excursion sat so high off the ground, early crash testing showed it would literally ride up the hood of a normal sedan in a head-on collision, crushing the passenger cabin instantly. To fix this legal liability, Ford had to quickly invent and weld a hidden steel crossmember under the front bumper called a blocker beam. Its sole job was to catch a smaller car's bumper and trigger their crumple zones. For the rear, they made a heavy-duty Class 4 trailer hitch, standard equipment, just to keep cars from sliding underneath the fuel tank. With that sorted, they extended the frame rearward, pushed the roofline over the cargo area, added a third row, slapped on some E-Series van taillights they had sitting in inventory, and called it a day. No new engine program, no new transmission development, no new chassis engineering from scratch. The development cost savings were enormous. We're talking tens of millions of dollars that Ford did not have to spend. And because the tooling and manufacturing line was already set up at the Kentucky truck plant, where Super Duty trucks were already being built, they slid the Excursion right onto the same assembly line. Word from people close to the program at the time was that Ford was pocketing somewhere around $15,000 in pure profit per vehicle on a truck that stickered around $35,000 to $40,000. That's a margin that would make a luxury automaker blush. And they had capacity for 70,000 units a year. Do the math on that.
September 30th, 1999, Texas State Fair. Ford pulls the covers off. Popular Science calls it, and I'm not editorializing here, the biggest sport utility on the planet. 226 inches long, nearly a foot longer than the Suburban, seating for 9 adults. And Ford offered 3 powertrain options that were, in that era, just disgusting in the best possible way. You had the 5.4-liter Triton V8 as the base. Solid, capable, completely overshadowed by its siblings. Then there was the 6.8-liter Triton V10. 10 cylinders, 310 horsepower. It would haul absolutely anything, and it would consume fuel at a rate that made oil executives genuinely happy. But the one people still talk about, the one that made the Excursion a legend before it even hit dealerships, was the 7.3-liter Power Stroke diesel, turbocharged, 275 horsepower from the factory, but with torque, 525 pound-feet of it that hit you like a freight train. Owners were reporting tow ratings up to 11,000 pounds. That 7.3 Power Stroke had already built a reputation in the Super Duty trucks as basically indestructible. 500,000 miles on a well-maintained 7.3 wasn't unheard of. Guys treated those engines like family heirlooms. And now, Ford was dropping that same engine into what was essentially a living room on wheels. The 2000 model year, Ford moved nearly 69,000 units. They basically sold out. Dealers were marking them up, wait lists. People were driving 6 hours to find inventory. Ford was sitting on the most profitable truck in America, and the timing felt perfect. Gas was still under $1.50 a gallon in most of the country. Nobody was thinking about the fuel tank. But here's what I want you to hold on to, because we'll come back to this. That 44-gallon fuel tank, with a V10 getting maybe 8 to 10 miles per gallon on a good day, it cost you roughly $26 to fill up in 1999. Seemed like nothing. The nuclear SUV arms race. I want to paint you a picture of what America was like in 1999 and 2000, because if you weren't there, it's hard to explain. The economy was on fire. The stock market was going vertical. People were buying big houses, big watches, big trucks. The SUV market didn't just grow in the late 90s, it went up nearly 6 times what it was in 1990. 6 times in a decade. And every automaker was in a full sprint to see who could build the biggest, most capable, most imposing thing on 4 wheels. GM had the Suburban 2500, Chevy had the Tahoe, GMC had the Yukon XL, Lincoln had the Navigator.
Cadillac was about to drop the Escalade. It was a nuclear arms race, but with horsepower and cup holders. The Excursion walked into that market and immediately became the alpha, the thing that made a Suburban look like a crossover. Men who'd never towed anything in their life were buying them because of what they represented. Strength, capability, the idea that if civilization ever collapsed on a Tuesday afternoon, you had the vehicle to handle it. Ford leaned right into it. Their marketing basically said, yeah, it's big. It's supposed to be big. America is big. And for about 2 years, that worked. But not everyone was celebrating. Before the Excursion sold a single unit, before one customer drove off a lot, the Sierra Club was already at war with it. They ran a contest on the internet in 1999. Name Ford's new SUV and give it a slogan, and the entries were brutal. Fordosaurus, powerful enough to pass anything on the highway, except a gas station. Ford Sedan, the truck that'll put America between Iraq and a hard place. But the winner, the one that stuck, the Ford Valdez. Have you driven a tanker lately? Named after the Exxon Valdez, the oil tanker that caused one of the worst environmental disasters in American history. They even held a mock award ceremony, giving Ford the official Exxon Valdez Award for environmental destruction. Ford was not amused. The Sierra Club's research division calculated that over the average lifetime of 120,000 miles, each Excursion would emit approximately 130 tons of carbon dioxide. Their spokesperson called it the antithesis of green leadership. But as we mentioned, the Excursion's massive 9,200-pound GVWR gave it a total legal shield. Because it was classified as a medium-duty vehicle, it sat completely outside Ford's corporate average fuel economy, CAFE, fleet calculations. Legally, it wasn't a passenger car, so its single-digit efficiency didn't drag down Ford's regulatory compliance numbers. The government essentially handed Ford a loophole big enough to drive an 8,000-pound SUV through, and Ford drove right through it. The collapse and the 6.0 disaster. The environmental backlash kept growing, but in 2000 and 2001, with sales strong and gas still cheap, Ford shrugged it off. Then the 2000s happened. Gas prices started climbing, slowly at first, then all at once. By 2004 and 2005, Americans were looking at the pump in genuine shock. What had been $1.40 a gallon was pushing $2.50, inching toward $3. And suddenly, that 44-gallon tank wasn't a feature. It was a brutal math problem. Fill the V10 Excursion at those prices, you're dropping $1.10 to $1.30 at the pump, and you're doing it every single week, sometimes twice a week if you're driving any real distance. To make matters worse, strict federal Tier 2 emissions regulations were rolling out, and they killed the legendary 7.3-liter diesel because it was too mechanically raw to meet the new clean air standards. To replace it, Ford rushed the complex electronic 6.0 Power Stroke diesel into production for the 2003 and 2004 model years, and the 6.0 was a disaster. Head gasket failures, blown EGR coolers, oil cooler clogs, the kind of catastrophic engine failures that sent owners to forums at midnight in a cold sweat looking for answers.